welcome back to the Calm and Connected podcast. I'm your host, Janine Halloran, and on today's episode, I wanted to address something that I get asked a lot whenever I talk about coping skills, and it is the question of when should I practice coping skills? So when somebody asks me this, I always give two answers. So I think about when in terms of people being emotionally ready to learn coping skills, and when in terms of actual times during the day that makes sense to practice coping skills. So first, let's talk about being emotionally ready to learn coping skills. So I always say the best time to teach coping skills is when kids are calm and when you as the grown-up are calm. So we both need to be in a calm state to be able to learn and take in information. So in psychology, there is this concept called the window of tolerance that was coined by Dr. Dan Siegel. And now I think about it like a rainbow, thanks to this lovely artist and therapist on Instagram called Lindsay Braman. And I'll link to her Instagram in the show notes because I love her illustrations of the different concepts that happen in psychology. And she has illustrated the window of tolerance in rainbow form. So imagine a rainbow with all the different colors, and then on each side of the rainbow there's a rain cloud. So there's a rain cloud on the left and the rain cloud on the right, and then there's a rainbow in the middle. So the idea is that we as humans have these windows of opportunity, these windows of tolerance, where we are feeling calm and regulated. That's the rainbow. That's where learning happens. That's where peacefulness happens. That's the time where we are self-regulated. That is the time to teach coping skills. So when kids' brains are in either the shutdown mode or in the explosive mode, it's not a time for learning. Their brain is off. Learning can't happen in the clouds, it happens in the rainbow. But not only do children need to be in the rainbow, we also need to be in the rainbow as the adults teaching the strategies, right? So when we're teaching coping skills, we need to be regulated. We want to share our calm. We teach coping skills in part by modeling. We want to show kids how to self-regulate. And if we want to do that, we actually have to be regulated ourselves. We need to share our calm. We want to be the thermostat in the home. We don't want to go up and down with the temperature of the home. We don't want to be a thermometer. We want to be the thermostat. We want to set the tone. We want to be regulated ourselves so that we can share our calm and share our strategies, share what works for us. We want to be able to practice with kids and help them learn what's going to work for them. So that's what we practice when kids are calm, because the rainbow is the teachable moment. It is so tempting when kids are in the clouds to want to step in and offer suggestions. I would say that's not the time to be learning new strategies. That's not the time to be introducing new strategies. If we've already practiced strategies with a child and they know what they are, they know that that strategy works for them, they like that strategy, that's when I would use visuals as a reminder. Because again, if your brain is off, it's really hard to take in verbal information, but it's easier to take in visual information, which is why I love using visuals with kids to help remind them of the strategies that they have. So that's the first thing. We want to be emotionally regulated. That's what we're looking for when we're trying to find a time to actually teach strategies. The second part, and this is the more practical part, and I always like to be as practical as possible, is when these times happen during the day. When are we looking for these calm moments where we can actually teach strategies to kids? So there are multiple opportunities during days, and I typically like to use transition points as times to teach and practice coping skills. So at the elementary school level in school, I like to use transition moments like the beginning and the end of the day, after lunch or recess, before lunch or recess. Those are great times to build skills. I've heard of teachers that use calming jars as kids come back in after lunch and recess. End of the day, having a little bit of a dance party, practicing that way. Using those opportunities of downtime, of transition as a moment to teach strategies. For middle and high school, I like the beginning and end of class or during those really long blocks where teachers have to divide up the time because the blocks are so long, using those transitional points as times to teach. I've heard of teachers in middle school, high school, who start their classes with mindful moments, just 2 mindful minutes. introducing strategies at those times, at those transition points, is a great way to practice, is a great way for kids to try and see if that's something that will work for them later on. At home, these transition points look like after snack, after school, or after dinner, or during a bedtime routine for younger kids. So if that is, we're going to take a bath, we're going to read a book, and then maybe we practice a strategy as part of the nighttime routine while they're in bed. For older kids, it could look like on the weekends, once they're up and about, after they've had a snack, maybe, coming in after an activity before going out to something that they have to do. Waiting for moments where there's a little bit more flexibility and a schedule for older kids. And oftentimes that might be the weekend, but it also could be seasonal. So right now for me in my area, it's springtime and there's a lot of spring sports happening, which means there's a lot of practices going on. And during the week might not be the best time. So that's a moment where I have to really be planful and say, okay, this season is busy. We're not going to have as much time to practice, to explore strategies, but we can come back to it later or look for those moments where it actually will have some opportunities. So maybe that is a Sunday when there is no game. So that's just something that you need to keep in mind, that it doesn't need to be something that happens all the time. It's okay to be seasonal about it as well, because life is busy and there's a lot of different things that happen in a child's life and a child's schedule and your own schedule. And to be cognizant and recognize that and to give yourself grace of, okay, it is all right if we're like taking a little bit of a step back right now and then you can get back to it. Maybe summertime is a time where there's a lot more downtime. I know in my home, that's what it is. Summertime is a lot more relaxed, especially now that I have teenagers. It's a lot more relaxed and chill. And so we do more things around dinner time. We do more things during the afternoons when they're up and awake. That for me is a time where I can start to build in more strategies, build in more skills, because we have the flexibility of not having to get up and go to school every day, not having to go to after school activities. All of that is a little bit different. So if you need more ideas for coping skills that kids will actually use, I would love for you to check out the Coping Skills Hub. It has everything you need to teach kids coping skills. There are over 100 coping strategies in the hub, and there are audio lessons for kids, teens, and adults to practice coping skills weekly. So a new audio drops every week, and I walk through practicing a skill in real time with you. So if we're going to do grounding exercises, like I think I've done rainbow grounding in some of those audios, so you actually walk through with me doing rainbow grounding, or I walk you through the different strategies that you can use. So it's been a lot of fun to start recording those and seeing how people are reacting to those. I've also included a 5-step framework in there that I use whenever I'm teaching kids coping skills. So it starts with connection and it ends with making sure that they have a coping skills toolkit ready and available for them to use when they need strategies in those tough moments. There's also an on-demand video library with courses, webinars, and lessons that are pretty quick and short. So there's so much more in there. I'd love for you to come check it out. Visit copingskillsforkids.com/hub. And right now you can sign up with a 7-day free trial. If you like this podcast, feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues and rate and review us wherever you listen. That helps us get found. And as always, don't forget about yourself. Take a few minutes, have a little fun, and have an awesome day.